The chancellor's office was shrouded in shadows when Anakin Skywalker entered, his heart heavy with doubts and concerns about Padme. Palpatine awaited him with a calculated smile, the one he always reserved for crucial moments. The conversation began smoothly, almost paternal, but quickly took on dark contours when the chancellor began speaking about the power to prevent death, about knowledge the Jedi would never share. It was then that the fateful words escaped Palpatine's lips, a confession disguised as an offer, revealing that only through the dark side could such power be achieved. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly, charged with a threatening energy that made Anakin's hair stand on end. At that precise moment, the office doors opened with an electronic snap and Obi-Wan Kenobi entered, his expression shifting from surprise to horror in a matter of seconds. He had followed Anakin discreetly, worried about his former Padawan's erratic behavior in recent days, and now witnessed the shocking truth that the Jedi Council had searched for more than a decade. Palpatine turned abruptly, his yellowed eyes gleaming with barely contained fury, as he realized his mask had fallen before an unwanted witness. The silence that followed was tense, each second seeming to last an eternity as the three men stared at each other. Obi-Wan activated his lightsaber with a characteristic hum, the blue blade illuminating his determined face as he positioned himself defensively. Anakin remained frozen between the two, his mind spinning in frantic circles as he processed the devastating revelation. Palpatine wasted no time, his voice acquiring a seductive and urgent tone as he addressed Anakin, completely ignoring Obi-Wan's threatening presence. He spoke about the power that only he possessed to prevent the tragedy Anakin had seen in his visions. The Chancellor painted the Jedi as hypocrites and liars, claiming they feared true power and kept secrets that could save countless lives. His words were like poison, carefully chosen to exploit every fear and insecurity Anakin carried. Obi-Wan took a step forward, his firm voice cutting through Palpatine's manipulations as he begged Anakin to see the truth, reminding him of everything they had shared, the years of training and friendship, the values they swore to uphold. The room seemed to pulse with the tension of the imminent confrontation, three destinies about to clash in an irrevocable manner. Anakin closed his eyes for a prolonged moment, the voices of Palpatine and Obi-Wan mixing in his mind like a chaotic storm. Images of pregnant Padme, smiling sweetly, alternated with dark visions of her death, each one tearing his heart in different ways. But then other memories emerged, stronger and deeper, recollections of Qui-Gon Jinn guiding him with kindness, of Obi-Wan defending him countless times, of moments of camaraderie and sacrifice alongside his Jedi brothers. When he opened his eyes again, there was a clarity in them that didn't exist before, a decision made in the depths of his soul. He activated his own lightsaber, the bright blue blade positioning itself beside Obi-Wan's, and the words that came from his mouth sealed Palpatine's fate. The Sith Lord's face contorted in pure fury, his fingers beginning to glow with electrical energy as he realized he had lost his most important gamble. The battle that followed was explosive and brutal, Palpatine revealing himself as Darth Sidious in all his terrible glory. He moved with supernatural speed, his red lightsaber materializing in his hands as he charged against the two Jedi with savage ferocity. Force lightning escaped from his hands, illuminating the room with deadly bluish light as Obi-Wan and Anakin defended themselves in perfect synchrony, their connection through the Force making them almost invincible together. Furniture was hurled, windows exploded, and the very air seemed to scream with the intensity of combat. Anakin channeled all his frustration and fear into raw power, his strikes increasingly strong and precise, while Obi-Wan maintained the calculated calm that always characterized him, finding openings in Sidious's furious defense. Finally, after minutes that seemed like hours, a devastating combination of their attacks managed to disarm the Sith Lord, and he fell to his knees, defeated but still defiant, his yellow eyes burning with hatred as security troops invaded the room and shackled him with restraints that blocked the Force. The Jedi Council gathered in emergency session the following day. The circular chamber atop the temple had never witnessed an assembly so charged with conflicting emotions. Master Yoda was seated in his chair, his ancient eyes fixed on Anakin Skywalker, who remained in the center of the room, while other masters like Mace Windu, Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi fervently discussed the implications of Palpatine's arrest. The revelation that the Supreme Chancellor was actually the mysterious Darth Sidious, the architect behind the Clone Wars, had shaken the Republic to its foundations. But amid the chaos and uncertainty, Yoda raised his small hand, silencing everyone present with a simple but authoritative gesture. He looked directly at Anakin, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of wisdom and understanding. The prophecy, he declared, had finally been fulfilled, not in the way they expected, but in an even more significant manner. Yoda explained his interpretation to the attentive assembly, his measured and profound words echoing through the chamber. Fulfilled, the prophecy was, when discovered, the Sith was, and defeated by the Chosen One alongside his master. Balance to the Force, Skywalker brought, exposing the darkness that blinded us and allowing the light to prevail. Mace Windu initially resisted this interpretation, arguing that there were still many unanswered questions about the exact nature of the prophecy. But as the discussion continued, more and more council members began to agree with Yoda's wisdom. Obi-Wan spoke passionately in Anakin's defense, recounting not only the bravery demonstrated during the confrontation with Sidious, but also the crucial moment when his former Padawan chose the right path despite the Sith Lord's seductive manipulations. Ki-Adi-Mundi observed that the discovery and arrest of Sidious had broken the cycle of Sith influence over the galaxy, something that hadn't been achieved in millennia. After hours of intense deliberation, a vote was held, and by almost unanimous decision, Anakin Skywalker was promoted to the rank of Jedi Master. Obi-Wan smiled proudly at his former apprentice, while tears of relief and gratitude filled Anakin's eyes. He had finally achieved the recognition he had so desired, but ironically, in that moment it didn't seem as important as before. His mind was preoccupied with Padme, with the visions that still haunted him in the quietest moments. Yoda perceived Anakin's inner turbulence and approached him after the ceremony. "Guide you through difficult moments? We will," said the old master kindly, "but open your heart. You must. When ready you are." Anakin only nodded, unable to form words as the weight of his secrets pressed against his chest. In the following days, while the Republic prepared for Palpatine's historic trial, Anakin found himself increasingly tormented. His visions about Padme's death hadn't ceased, and in fact seemed to be intensifying. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, anxiety consuming him from within like a slow fire. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Anakin made a decision that would change everything. Using his new Jedi Master credentials, he gained access to the maximum security facility where Palpatine was being held, claiming the need to interrogate the prisoner about possible remaining Sith cells. The guards, impressed with his new status and recent heroism, allowed his entry without much questioning. The cell was sterile and cold, reinforced with anti-force technology. But when Anakin entered, Palpatine's eyes lit up with a triumphant gleam that made the Jedi's stomach churn. Palpatine wasted no time with preliminaries, his drawling and poisonous voice filling the small space as he wove his final web. He spoke about Anakin's visions, confirming they were real and inevitable unless he acted quickly. "Only I can save your wife, Anakin," Palpatine whispered with false compassion. "The knowledge to prevent her death is beyond the Jedi's reach." Then came the veiled threat. Wrapped in paternal concern, Palpatine casually mentioned that during his upcoming public trial, he would have no choice but to reveal all the information he possessed about breaches of the Jedi Code, including certain forbidden relationships between a young master and a senator from Naboo. Anakin felt his blood freeze in his veins as he realized the trap he had fallen into. If Palpatine revealed his secret marriage to Padme, he would be expelled from the Order in disgrace. And worse still, Padme would face a political scandal that could destroy her career and reputation. But if he helped Palpatine escape, perhaps there was still a chance to save the woman he loved more than his own life. The choice was impossible, a moral dilemma that tore his soul in half, and as Anakin looked at Palpatine's malicious smile, he knew with terrible certainty that he was about to commit a mistake that couldn't be undone. The discovery of Anakin's betrayal came faster than he expected, security recordings revealing his unauthorized visit to Palpatine's cell just hours before the prisoner mysteriously disappeared during a supposed transfer. The Jedi Council summoned Anakin immediately, The atmosphere in the chamber was icy and accusatory, so different from the celebration of just days ago. Mace Windu confronted him directly, demanding explanations while other masters watched with expressions ranging from disappointment to contained anger. Anakin tried to lie initially, but the words died in his throat as he saw Obi-Wan's devastated look. His former master seemed to have aged years and days, and the pain in his blue eyes was sharper than any lightsaber blade. Finally, unable to bear the crushing weight of so many accumulated lies, Anakin broke, words pouring from him in a chaotic and desperate confession about his secret marriage to Padme, about the visions of her death, about Palpatine's blackmail and his terrible decision to release him in hopes of saving the only person who mattered more than anything. The silence that followed his confession was absolute and devastating. Yoda closed his eyes, his expression laden with profound sadness as he slowly shook his head. "Betrayed our trust, you have, young Skywalker," said the ancient master with trembling voice. "Not only broken the code, you have, but released a great evil into the galaxy again, you have." Mace Windu was more direct and severe, declaring that Anakin had committed treason against the Order and against the entire Republic, his actions putting countless lives in danger. Obi-Wan tried to defend his former Padawan, arguing that Anakin had been manipulated and blackmailed, but even his voice lacked conviction. The vote was quick and unanimous. Anakin Skywalker would be expelled from the Jedi Order, his rank as Master revoked, and he would be banished from the temple immediately. When the guards came to escort him out, Anakin looked one last time at Obi-Wan, trying to find words to express his regret, but his former master simply turned away, unable to face what his apprentice had become. Anakin and Padme went to Naboo that same night, the senator having resigned from her position when the scandal became public. The mountain village where they spent their secret honeymoon offered temporary refuge, but neither found peace there. Padme was hurt by Anakin's betrayal in freeing Palpatine, even understanding his motivations, while Anakin sank deeper and deeper into despair and self-recrimination. He had lost everything, his identity as a Jedi, his purpose, his honor, and worse still, Palpatine was free somewhere in the galaxy, probably planning his revenge. The weeks dragged on in a fog of uncertainty, until one night, perimeter sensors alerted about an unidentified ship landing near the property. Anakin activated the lightsaber he had kept despite his expulsion, his heart racing as he prepared for the worst. When Palpatine emerged from the shadows, his smile was triumphant and cruel, the embodiment of everything Anakin had feared. Palpatine didn't come alone. Behind him marched clone soldiers with strange markings on their armor, their eyes empty and lifeless behind their visors. The Sith Lord explained with sadistic pleasure that Order 66 had been activated, a contingency command implanted in every clone during their creation, instantly transforming them into programmed assassins to eliminate all Jedi. At that exact moment, throughout Coruscant and across the galaxy, Jedi were being attacked by those who had fought beside them for years. The Jedi Temple was under siege, masters were falling, Padawans being hunted without mercy. Palpatine had orchestrated the final destruction of the Order he had dedicated 1,000 years to planning. He then turned his attention to Anakin, offering one last chance. "Join me and together we shall rule the galaxy. With your power and my wisdom, we will be invincible." Padme screamed for Anakin not to listen, her hands protective over her swollen belly, but Palpatine only laughed, declaring that the child could also be trained in the dark side, creating a Sith dynasty that would last millennia. Something broke inside Anakin at that moment, not toward the dark side as Palpatine expected, but in the opposite direction. All his frustrations, all his anger, all his pain and regret converged into a singular point of absolute clarity. He saw Palpatine for what he really was, a parasite that had fed on his insecurities and fears, a manipulator who had destroyed countless lives in his insatiable quest for power. The dark side had always tempted Anakin with promises of strength to protect those he loved, but now he realized that true power came from something deeper, not from anger or fear, but from the absolute need to protect the future, to ensure that his son or daughter would never grow up in a galaxy ruled by tyranny. He reached for the Force like never before, not pulling from the light side or dark, but from somewhere in between, where both met in perfect balance. When Anakin extended his hands, rays of pure energy exploded from his palms, Not the corrupt blue lightning of the dark side, but something different, golden and devastating, channeling raw power that made the very air around vibrate. Palpatine tried to defend himself, his own lightning meeting Anakin's in a blinding explosion of light, but he was weak from his imprisonment, reckless in his arrogance, and Anakin was fighting not for power, but for love. The Sith Lord screamed as the energy consumed him, his body convulsing before collapsing, finally and permanently defeated by the Chosen One whose destiny he had tried to corrupt. The battle at the Jedi Temple in Coruscant had turned into a brutal massacre when the first news reached Naboo through emergency channels. Obi-Wan led the desperate defense alongside Mace Windu and Yoda, but the clones kept coming in endless waves, their precise tactics and intimate knowledge of the temple layout making them deadly adversaries. Young Padawans had been gathered in the deepest chambers of the temple, protected by wounded masters who formed a last line of defense. Outside, the city was in chaos, citizens running in panic as clones established blockades and hunted any Jedi attempting to escape. Ki-Adi-Mundi had fallen on Kashyyyk, Plo Koon as well. Reports of deaths arrived from every corner of the galaxy as Order 66 fulfilled its terrible purpose. Yoda felt each death through the Force. Each light that went out was like a stab in his ancient heart, and he knew with dark certainty that this could be the end of the Jedi after 1,000 generations. It was in this moment of deepest despair that a familiar ship broke through the orbital blockade, ignoring orders to stop and descending at dangerous speed toward the temple. Automatic defenses almost shot it down before someone recognized the markings of Anakin Skywalker's personal ship. Obi-Wan felt his former apprentice through the Force before seeing him, that bright and chaotic presence that always characterized him. But there was something different now, a depth and purpose that didn't exist before. Anakin emerged from the ship running, his lightsaber already ignited as he cut through the ranks of clones trying to stop him. In his left hand, he carried a dark cloth bag, its contents obscure but clearly important by the careful way he held it. He fought his way to the temple's main entrance. His movements were fluid and devastating, each strike precise and efficient, not wasting energy on unnecessary flourishes but focused completely on reaching his destination. When Anakin finally crossed through the temple doors and arrived at the chamber where the council had gathered to coordinate the defense, all eyes turned to him. The bag fell on the marble floor with a heavy, wet sound, rolling briefly before stopping at Mace Windu's feet. Anakin didn't wait for anyone to ask, simply opened the bag, revealing Palpatine's head, his yellow eyes now opaque and lifeless, frozen in an expression of final surprise and fury. The silence in the chamber was absolute, everyone processing the implication of what they were seeing. Anakin then knelt before the council, his voice hoarse with emotion as he asked for forgiveness once again, not expecting to be accepted back, not believing he deserved mercy, but offering his life and power to help save what remained of the order he had betrayed. He quickly explained how Palpatine had found him in Naboo, how the Sith Lord tried to seduce him one last time, and how he finally understood his true nature and purpose, channeling power he didn't even know he possessed to end his tormentor once and for all. Yoda slowly approached the kneeling Anakin, his ancient eyes studying the young man with an intensity that seemed to penetrate to his soul. Impressed, "I am young Skywalker," said the Jedi Master, his voice carrying something that could be the beginning of forgiveness. "Lost you were, but found back to the path you have. Redeemed through action, not words, you have redeemed yourself." Mace Windu still seemed skeptical, but even he couldn't deny the significance of what Anakin had done, not just eliminating the Sith who orchestrated the entire war, but coming to the temple during its darkest moment instead of fleeing to safety. Obi-Wan finally approached, placing a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder, and when Anakin looked up, he saw tears in his master's eyes, not of sadness but of complicated and painful pride. "Welcome back, Anakin," Obi-Wan said simply, and those 3 words carried the weight of forgiveness and acceptance that Anakin didn't even know he desperately needed. Anakin wasted no time, rising and immediately assuming a leadership role in the temple's defense. His experience as a general during the Clone Wars proved invaluable as he coordinated strategic counterattacks, using his intimate knowledge of clone tactics against them. He positioned himself on the front lines alongside Obi-Wan, the two fighting in perfect synchrony like in the old days. their blades moving in deadly harmony that repelled wave after wave of programmed soldiers. Mace Windu watched from an elevated position, coordinating groups of Jedi to protect the temple's most vulnerable areas while evacuating the wounded to the healing chambers. The battle raged through the sacred corridors, the sound of lightsabers clashing with blaster fire echoing off ancient walls that had witnessed 1,000 years of peace. Anakin shouted orders to the defenders, his voice cutting through the chaos and providing direction when all seemed lost, his presence alone inspiring renewed courage in those fighting beside him. But it was his new mastery over his powers that truly turned the tide of battle, those golden lightning bolts he had used against Palpatine now sweeping through entire formations of clones, not killing them but overloading their electronic systems and disabling their weapons. The clones fell unconscious but alive, their armor smoking slightly as internal circuits burned in a controlled manner. Yoda watched fascinated as Anakin channeled this unique power, something he had never witnessed in centuries of life, a manifestation of the Force that was neither completely light nor dark, but something between the two, a true balance that the prophecy had promised but in a way none of them understood until that moment. R2-D2 worked furiously at a nearby terminal, his appendages connected directly to the temple's networks as he hacked into clone communication systems. The small droid emitted frantic beeps of excitement when he finally gained access to the central command codes, transmitting the cancellation sequences that Anakin had extracted from Palpatine's mind in his final moments before his life was completely extinguished. Slowly, sector by sector, Order 66 began to be deactivated throughout Coruscant. Clones stopped in the middle of their actions, their empty eyes blinking with confusion as the murderous programming was overwritten by emergency protocols. Some fell to their knees, horrified upon realizing what they had done while under control of the contingency order, their hands trembling as they looked at the Jedi they had tried to eliminate. Others simply lowered their weapons, awaiting new orders that would never come, trapped in a limbo of conflicting programming. The battle that had lasted hours began to diminish, the sound of combat gradually replaced by cries of relief and groans of wounded being treated. Obi-Wan allowed himself a moment of exhaustion, leaning against a wall as he deactivated his lightsaber, his body aching from countless minor injuries. He looked at Anakin, who was helping to lift rubble to free trapped Jedi, and for the first time in weeks, Obi-Wan felt something like hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they would manage to survive this and emerge stronger on the other side. It took hours of constant combat and coordination efforts across the galaxy, but eventually the temple was secured, the clones reprogrammed or neutralized, and messages were sent through secret channels for surviving Jedi to return to the capital. The Order had been devastated, more than half of its members lost during the coordinated attack, but not destroyed, thanks largely to the actions of a fallen Jedi who found his way back when it mattered most. During a solemn ceremony held among the still-smoking ruins of the Great Hall, with bodies of fallen Jedi lined in respectful rows awaiting funeral rites, Anakin Skywalker was formally readmitted to the Jedi Order. He didn't receive back his title of Master, nor even his previous rank as Knight, but was accepted simply as Jedi, having to prove himself again through actions and not words, but with a second chance that few in the Order's history had ever received. Padme was present at the ceremony, her belly visibly swollen with advanced pregnancy, and the Council said nothing about her presence, a silent acknowledgement that the old rules needed to be reevaluated. As the Council gathered in the following days to discuss the future, all agreed that fundamental changes were necessary. The code needed to be revisited, inflexible dogmas questioned, for it had become clear that the very rigidity of the Order had created the cracks that Palpatine had so skillfully exploited. If the Jedi wanted to survive and thrive in future generations, they needed to learn to embrace the balance that Anakin represented, light and shadow coexisting not in eternal conflict but in imperfect and deeply human harmony, recognizing that the Force flowed through all things and that denying it in its totality was to deny the very essence of life in the galaxy.